Welcome into the PFF NFL show. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson. I heard a rumor, Sam, we might be getting Mike back.
Yeah,
soon.
he is. He is returning from secret assignment to the Yukon.
I'll believe it when I see it. So Mike might be back with us next week, but we're holding the fort still without him. Our general combo, a little bit of NFL news to run through. We've got some catch rule. We've got some OBJ. And then we're going to get into some of the analytics and some of the stuff we've actually been learning over these last 4 years. We've been waiting to finally unleash or just learn about what exactly our college data means when translating to the NFL. We've got some guys working hard on it. We're going to get into, predicting quarterback play, predicting pass rushers, and all sorts of fun stuff. So, you ready to dive in?
Yeah. I wasn't when you started the podcast. You took me by surprise. I didn't know you were starting up, and you just went.
I just went. Yeah, we're just trying to be efficient.
That's okay.
Quick and efficient here.
We'll make it work.
So, catch rule.
Yeah.
We had a little video online. We thought it was fixed until they added part 3.
Yeah. So they removed the going to the ground element of the catch rule. Now you just need control, 2 feet down, and the football move thing, which they at least elaborated on a little bit to include the reaching over the goal line thing. Take away the Jesse James play. So that part works. They kind of fixed something that was definitely fundamentally wrong with the rule. They removed the going to the ground element, so you no longer need to hold on to the ball for 5 minutes after you've caught it, hit the dirt, and pick it up and hand it to an official type of deal. Going to the ground is dead. They added a little bit of uncertainty with their third point in this, which was having, I think the potential was the word to make a football move, or the ability to make a football move, which seems to be opening yourself back up to this layer of uncertainty. But I think broadly speaking, it's probably taken a step in the right direction.
They've tightened up the uncertainty at least.
Yeah.
Because they added the reach part of it. The fact that they could see you reach with the football, that makes perfect sense. If you're reaching with the football, you have possession. Let's call that possession now. So I'm all in on that part. We have a new targeting rule, no lowering of the head to go tackle. This is the part that scares a little bit more, right? As far as the intent of it, and now guys getting kicked out of games because of it.
So this is a scary rule. Not one because it has the potential to dramatically change the game. 2, because the process of implementing it seems to have been a total train wreck. They announced that they'd agreed to a rule, but had no earthly idea of what the rule actually was. We're going to remove the helmet from tackling. We're going to make targeting a thing, can't lower the crown of the helmet, et cetera, et cetera. We don't actually understand quite how that's going to work, and we'll tell you the language later. But we've agreed to it. It's passed.
Right.
Now, that in and of itself as a process is just ridiculous. That should not be how any sensible rule change takes place, and that is concerning. When they introduced the last rule that you can't lower the crown of your helmet to make a hit, apparently that was called twice, which I think is probably what's prompted some of this, is that the last rule they made to try and fix some of this did nothing. So if this is brought in essentially to focus only on the plays where a guy completely lowers his head and just launches himself blindly at a guy, that is fine, because those are terrible tackle attempts. You're coached not to do that because if no other reason you're going to do yourself an injury, let alone the guy you're spearing. If it's solely devised to take that out of the game, I'm okay with it. The problem with that is, 1, we don't know if it is yet, and 2, even if it is, the rule is going to be written in such a way that you're basically putting your faith back in the hands of guys who couldn't effectively identify what a catch is. So if you can't identify what a catch is, how am I going to trust you to draw the line on when where a kind of a questionable tackle attempt is in terms of lowering your helmet?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no interest in this.
No?
No.
Why not?
I don't have an opinion.
Guys are going to get kicked out of the games for putting their head down, and you have no opinion on it.
No, I have an opinion. That's bad. I don't want to see guys kicked out of games. I don't know. I don't want to sit here and talk about hypothetical targeting rules and all this stuff. Why'd you put this on my list?
Because this is news, and it's important news. And I'm just explaining why. It's going to get people kicked out of the game for routine football plays.
So I disagree with that premise. I don't want that to happen.
So you do care.
The biggest complaint from players is the disconnect between people making the rules, even though they're former players, in some cases, people making the rules and not understanding the speed at which the game happens, the fact that your helmet's going one place and then a guy moves into all the different things that happen in this 100-mile-an-hour car crash, and how guys will get screwed.
But the other thing is that this process part is a really big part of this, because the catch rule we've seen getting systematically warped through the years due to specific instances that come up that break the existing rule. So you write it up, you think it looks perfect on paper, and then a Calvin Johnson situation arrives, or a Des Bryant did he catch it thing happens, and suddenly the rule has gone to hell, and you now need to rewrite it to fix this specific scenario.
Right.
So they've implemented this without even writing it down yet, so we don't know how it's going to come. And if even just the broad interpretation appears to be, if you lower your head and initiate contact, that is now a penalty. But you can think of multiple ways where that happens in the course of a game that should be completely legit. A running back heading into hell between the tackles lowers his helmet and plows forward to try and avoid getting killed by guys jacking him up from underneath.
Have they called the running back one yet, though?
The old rule, that was exempt. The old rule that you can't lower the crown of your helmet to attack a guy, running backs between the tackles were exempt from that. Not anymore. That's now going to be a penalty.
I gotcha.
The other situation, goal line situations, 4-point stance for linemen. Everybody is just trying to get as low as humanly possible. Like the snap, there's like 10 guys just crash into each other head first. All of those are now a penalty.
Everybody's thrown out.
Everybody's ejected. That's a problem.
So my prediction the other day in some random tweet, I said Brady's like 8 years from now, Brady's going to be mulling retirement.
Yeah.
Right? And then that year, the NFL is just like, that's it, flag football.
Seriously.
And then Brady's just like, all right,
I'm back. Another 10 years.
10 more years of Brady, 6 more Super Bowls over the next 16 years. That's it.
They
That's
said somewhere in the course of this that the data they had on helmet collisions suggested there were 80 to 90 instances in a game of guys lowering their helmet to initiate contact. Now, in theory, every one of those is now a 15-yard penalty that can result in an ejection. Either you're not calling these, and what you're trying to do is get rid of the egregious play that everybody agrees should be taken out, or you're genuinely talking about trying to remove 80 to 90 plays in a game through punitive penalty action, which is going to result in some, even if it happens, even if it works long term, like the first few months of this are going to be horrendous if that's the plan.
I've had enough.
Okay.
Are we done?
Well, that's fine.
Targeting? I appreciate your opinions on it, though.
You don't.
We'll report back once
you don't
we
sound
have more
like you
specific rules. I'm more interested. I'm just so excited about the analytic stuff that we're going to get to.
Don't try and get around it that way.
That's what it is.
You don't care about
I'm so excited about the next thing on my sheet.
Steve doesn't care about the integrity of the game is what this boils down to.
I do not. OBJ, 2 first-rounders potentially for the Giants. What are your thoughts on the Giants? First off, potentially trading him for maybe 2 first-round picks, and then the fact that they're sitting there at 2, heavy rumors that they're not going to draft a quarterback, maybe trading down to accumulate more picks. Could this be a franchise-changing offseason with all these draft picks now, or is this stupid? Like, hey, just draft a quarterback and keep OBJ.
The biggest thing that all that hinges on is whether they're going to be able to sign him long-term.
Right.
Because that's what he's looking for, is the big long-term contract. It's presumably what they would like to do as well, but who knows if they can get that done. And their new GM, Dave Gettleman, has form in this regard. A couple of years ago, it looked like they were so far apart in terms of a new long-term contract with Josh Norman that they just cut him. They're like, we're not going to be able to get this done. See ya. Out the door, Josh Norman went. That was one of the shocks of that offseason. I mean, I don't know if they think that they are not going to be able to get a reasonable deal done with OBJ. And by a reasonable deal, I mean, they're going to want to put him presumably at the top of the wide receiver market, but no higher. He is saying, I'm one of the best players in the league. Give me QB money. And that's where you're going to get silly. And that's, who knows if he's piggybacking on the back of this Kirk Cousins stuff, and now he's saying, not only do I want QB money, but I want it guaranteed.
Guaranteed too, yeah.
I mean, that's not going to work. So at that point, you have to start looking at trading for him, because otherwise you're going to end up cutting him like you did with Josh Norman.
If you can get 2 firsts, or, like number 4 overall from the Browns, and then a second or a third, I mean, I think it's something you definitely have to consider. So if he's talking QB money, the thing we've talked about strategically around the NFL now is when you have the quarterback on your rookie contract, your Carson Wentz's and Jared Goff's and the old Russell Wilson when they built Seattle, you have to take advantage of that time. If you have a receiver who's asking for big-time quarterback money. You can't even afford to pay quarterbacks that much money and build a team, so you can't do that with a receiver. So if a team's willing to take him and they've got the crazy cap space, then I think you have to flip him.
The other aspect of that is that I don't think, as good as elite wide receivers can be and as game-changing as they can be, I don't know that they have a transformative effect on even their offense in the same way certain other positions can. Obviously, the quarterback makes the single biggest impact on anything, but cornerback, we saw Marshawn Lattimore come in last year, and suddenly the New Orleans defense is just a different unit when you have one shutdown guy in that group. I think there's certain other positions where that's true. I don't know that wide receiver is one of them. You know, OBJ has been on that team for a few years now, and they've had some pretty crappy offenses despite him being amazing. Now,
I think on an individual basis, yes. I think it's the receiving core with the sum of its parts can be transformative.
But not one guy.
Right. But if you could build the other pieces around, I always go back to 2015 Cincinnati, A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Tyler Eifert.
But
now
again,
you've got different styles and different positions all loaded.
And all that becomes harder to do if you have to sign the guy to monster QB money.
Fair.
So, yeah, I think the trading thing is very real because it looks harder and harder to keep him around and happy.
Well, apparently the Rams, since they're playing Madden this offseason,
since they're bringing everybody in,
they are interested. The Rams are interested since they're just adding Pro Bowlers left and right.
That would be pretty scary.
We'll see what happens
to that offense.
Very scary.
Already has Gurley. Already has Gerald Everett looking pretty good as a rookie tight end. Cooper Kupp as your possession slot guy.
I mean, if you're looking at that roster, they do lack that number one wide receiver. Sammy Watkins wasn't really a number one last year, but he was their clear deep threat. And Odell Beckham wins everywhere. He's a clear number one. You add that to that offense, absolutely, it's scary.
Those are ridiculous.
Those are the two things we highlighted in our YouTube video. Be sure to go check out our YouTube channel and subscribe, please, because we're just dropping content every day on that thing, including this here, this podcast right here.
GIFs made of it, T-Rex arm GIFs.
Yeah, we did. You gotta be careful. We're on camera pretty much every day now.
Yeah,
that's different for us here in life. Like you can't screw up.
Well, yeah, you've got to be careful what you do now because it's on camera.
Right. Hi. So the one position that we said though, if the Rams still, if they still need to round out their roster with probably some receiver depth or a stud receiver. Really, they've got depth, a stud receiver, some defensive and some edge help, and maybe some linebacker help. So Odell Beckham would certainly help there. We'll follow that situation and we'll be sure to report on it, Sam. Much like the targeting rule. You want to get into some of this draft analytics stuff?
Yeah. So. I wrote up a script for a podcast today. Now we're switching gears. We're going to the draft. See?
Next up, cross this off. Next up,
take that
analytics.
One off. Now we've got the draft, and we're looking at the analytics stuff. A lot of that on the website this week. We've been diving into some of the numbers. Eric and George, who you can listen to on the PFF Forecast, have done a fantastic job of diving into some of these numbers. And the first one I want to talk about is... You tweeted about it. I tweeted a little bit off the back of yours. Everybody looks for sort of upside and potential and looking to see the high point of what a QB prospect can do.
Right.
So we assume they can make the easy throws and do all this routine stuff. But if they can do all the high-end stuff, the NFL throws, the deep corners, all this kind of stuff, that's the important thing. But actually, when you start diving into our numbers, what these guys are discovering is that the routine stuff is the stuff that is the most stable year to year, obviously, when you think about it. And therefore, some of it is the most predictive. So if you've got a guy that's struggling with the routine stuff, the easy, high percentage plays, if he's not able to do that at an efficient rate, that's a way bigger red flag than almost anything else you can think of because those are the things you can't fix. So the logic that if he can do the high-end stuff, I can teach him to do the easy stuff, and then we're golden, actually is probably getting teams into trouble.
I want to clarify what sounds the easy part of it, right? So there's two parts of it. We found that all stats and grades are more stable from a clean pocket. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about the hard stuff, and I'm guilty of this as well, and there is a certain level of you need to see a guy play well under pressure. But when you talk about the stability of that year to year, the pressure stuff fluctuates. That's why you see seasons like Carson Palmer out of nowhere having an incredible 2015 season because he, in 1 year, completely played differently than he ever had under pressure, which it's just a rarity. You're not going to maintain that. So at the college level, you're like, I get to see this guy play under pressure, when you really have to see him play in a clean pocket and hit throws. Then our accuracy stuff comes in there. And this isn't easy. So easy is a little bit of it's a little misleading the way I worded it. The easy part, though, or the stable part, is hitting open throws accurately. We found that the ability to hit an open receiver stays stable. That's just what happens year to year. But our guys have bucketed those throws into what we call NFL throws. So those will be your 15-yard dig routes and your over-the-shoulder downfield passes in rhythm. And we've put all these different scenarios together and said these are the throws at the NFL level that not only are most important and most valuable, but the ones where, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers perform better than the bottom-end quarterbacks. So those are the passes that actually stay most stable and hitting open receivers on those NFL throws. So it's hitting open guys and doing so from a clean pocket.
Yeah,
that's most important.
There's multiple different angles to this. Some of it is finding the next great quarterback, but another aspect of that is avoiding the bust. So one of these numbers, the clean pocket stuff, may not necessarily find you the next great quarterback, because there are bad quarterbacks that do extremely well from a clean pocket, and what differentiates them from the great ones is that when the pressure is applied, they fall to pieces. So Rex Grossman was always a pretty good player from a clean pocket, but as soon as pressure was applied, Rex Grossman turned into Sexy Rexy and started firing the ball everywhere, usually to defenders. Bad things happened.
Right. So, so there's this certain level where if they're bad under pressure, they're probably going to be bad under pressure.
Yeah, but the key is, if a guy can't do the easy stuff, that's a huge red flag in terms of bust potential.
Right.
Because if that's the stuff that stays consistent year to year, and if you can't play from a clean pocket, it almost doesn't matter what you're able to do from a cluttered pocket or when pressure is applied, because your baseline just isn't high enough to be successful at the next level.
That's why actually Palmer's breakout season, you could have predicted that in a given year that would have happened. I remember back in 2013 when I was breaking all this stuff down, before I knew the value of clean pocket versus pressure, he was like number 2 or 3 in the league in all significant passing numbers from a clean pocket, but he was second from the bottom when under pressure. So the instant analysis there is like, oh, he just struggles under pressure, when the reality of it is I can bank on the clean stuff, the clean pocket stuff, staying somewhat stable every year, being very good, and in one of these years he's just going to get lucky under pressure. Everything's going to go well for him, and that's what happened in 2015.
And even if he doesn't get lucky, that is dependent so much on supporting cast that you can change the number attached to that by you can cut it in half by just having a good offensive line.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, so if a guy goes from being pressured 45% of his snaps at one of the worst offensive lines in the league, suddenly the next year they fix that offensive line, total overhaul, he's now being pressured 20% of his snaps. You've immediately made that guy, almost twice as good as he would have been before, because the pressure is just a much smaller deal.
So this comes back to the first year we did this advanced charting data. It was the 2015 college season, 2016 draft class. That was the Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott class. And I wrote about this last year, and I went back and I said, we didn't know what the data meant at the time, but Dak was far and away the best quarterback in that class. Far and away the best at hitting open receivers. And I know it sounds so simple and easy. You will never hear an analyst get out there and be like, why I like Baker Mayfield is because he just hits open receivers. I mean, they don't say that.
Well,
they talk about Josh Allen can throw the ball 70 yards.
That's all assumed, that every one of these quarterbacks can do that. But the difference in the variance in how often they do it and how successfully is significant. And that's very part of what we're quantifying here. So let's turn this ahead to this draft. So we've kind of established now that this is a really big key in terms of avoiding busts and identifying the potential success of these guys. The obvious 2 players I think that brings up are the 2 that have less successful high percentage numbers. So Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Those are the 2 guys that have low completion percentages, and we'll get to that particular stat in a minute. What does this mean for them?
So let me just qualify all of this too. There have been NFL quarterbacks. There are NFL quarterbacks that have success with low accuracy numbers, with poor accuracy. We'll call it below average accuracy. Cam is in that bucket. There are guys that have done it. Jared Goff last year, by the way, not accurate by our numbers whatsoever. he just increased his open throws by about 15% from the previous year. So those are the types of things we're pulling out here. Like, I love Jared Goff, but the breakout season that he had was very much scheme-based and dependent on what was going on around him. But the guys, Deshaun Watson last year, not accurate. Incredible stats. Not accurate. He was accurate on certain throws down the field, and he was accurate on behind the line of scrimmage throws, which turned into a 150 passer rating. And so his numbers were inflated, but you have to have some sort of other trump card if you're not accurate, right? So with Watson or with Cam.
It's the Cam Newton discussion we've always had. He's
had.
Never going to be an accurate, high-percentage, conservative type of quarterback. So in order to offset that, you unleash him down the field and you let him make every one of those he does hit is a big play.
So I think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have enough of a trump card to mitigate the fact that they're at below average NFL accuracy. Both guys. Okay, so Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, both well below where you want them from an accuracy standpoint, but I think Josh Allen with the cannon for an arm and the fact that he showed very well on vertical lead throws, that's your posts, that's your tight window downfield throws. He was actually pretty good on those. In Lamar, because I've written about this quite a bit, I think he makes up for his accuracy with the fact that his running ability can be a weapon at the next level. So Josh Allen's arm can create big plays. Lamar Jackson's legs can create big plays, but also Lamar's legs are going to create some open throws as well. So the same thing we're talking about Goff. He wasn't accurate last year, but he had open throws. I think Lamar's legs, if used properly, will create enough open throws that, you know what, it doesn't matter if you're throwing a 10-yard pass that's a little bit on the back hip or whatever it is. He can at least complete that, so he'll have enough manufactured easy throws to get by. So that's where I am with both of those guys.
That makes sense.
Discuss your completion percentage deal. If you want.
Well, this is so I wanted to bring up a little topical thing. There's a lot of people are discussing the overall completion percentage of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And Mel Kiper had a big thing on this during the week. He said, forget the completion percentage. The number is misleading. Stats are for losers, Mel said. Watch the tape. If you watch the tape, you'll see a different story to the completion percentage. Now, the first point I would make is that I think that's fair. I think completion percentage overall for both these guys is a little misleading. Having said that, if you do go to the tape and you then record statistically what you saw on the tape, you come to the same kind of conclusion that those are making. So, the stats are for losers part, little bit wide of the mark, Mel. Your problem is you're just working from the wrong stat.
The wrong stat, absolutely.
So let's dive into this a little bit. We've got a few different numbers. The big thing that everyone harps on about for these two guys is screens. They have a lower completion percentage than in particular Baker Mayfield, and it's all because of the screen game. Josh Allen last year, and that's legit. Baker Mayfield attempted way more screens than either of these guys. So 20.2% of Baker Mayfield's pass attempts last year were screen plays. The NCAA average is 14%, so Mayfield is 6% higher than college football's average. Josh Allen was at 9.3%, so half of what Baker Mayfield's was. Lamar Jackson was at 5.2%, so like a quarter of Baker Mayfield's average. So those are huge numbers that definitely skew the completion percentage overall. Having said that, we also track kind of quarterback fault incompletions. So every incompletion that gets made, we have a reason that ball was incomplete. Was it broken up by a DB? Was it a simple miss by the quarterback? Was it dropped? Was it a receiver error? All these things. So we have a bunch grouped into a quarterback fault category, whether it was underthrown, whether it was a misread in coverage, they threw it straight to a linebacker, all that kind of stuff. Josh Allen's quarterback fault number last year was 20.2% again. So a fifth of all those incompletions were on him. The NCAA average was 17%, so he's higher than the average. Baker Mayfield, 9.7%. So half the average of Josh Allen is Baker Mayfield in terms of, he was the only quarterback in the college football landscape to be under 10% of his incompletions were on him, basically. So the screen stuff is definitely a big factor there, but also there's just a huge amount of those plays that are on the quarterback. You've got some deeper stuff there in terms of that advanced accuracy charting we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, just from I think so when you look at Lamar and Allen, actually the completion percentage does kind of get you in the ballpark when
Yeah.
it comes to those guys. And Lamar, some people pointed back to me, his adjusted completion percentage was actually pretty decent. That's our own number. But his actual accuracy wasn't. So this comes back to he's throwing adjusted completion percentage is saying catchable passes. How many catchable passes are you throwing? So this is what I'm saying with Lamar. A lot like Michael Vick, he'll throw catchable passes. He'll throw wrong shoulder, too high, too low. But if the guy's open, there's, you can at least create some value there. Lamar had, out of the 9 guys that we did this advanced accuracy charting, he had the highest percentage of open throws. And I truly believe that's not just relying on the system in Louisville. It's because they had to focus on him and his legs. And Allen had the second lowest out of the 9. So the people that so we've trashed Josh Allen jokingly over here about his inaccuracy and all that stuff. But a lot of some of the narratives are kind of true.
Well,
he does have it more difficult.
This is the thing about all this is there's no one answer to any of this stuff. We're not all of this stuff has nuance, and it's a case of picking each individual strand of this and seeing where the overall thing lies. So Allen definitely, the supporting cast was definitely an issue. It didn't show up in drops. He only had 12 drops in the season, I think. I think Josh Rosen had 30 something.
It was the open receivers.
Yeah,
it was guys getting open.
It was the guys weren't getting open. The number that I would point to, though, if you want to say the completion percentage thing doesn't matter because they're not throwing screens, so they're not getting an inflated adjustment boosted by 5-10% for all these screens that Baker Mayfield is throwing, all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's a fair point that is logical. Now let's tease it out a little bit. If you look at throws behind the line of scrimmage, where are Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson?
As far as accuracy goes?
Exactly. Accuracy on throws behind the line of scrimmage.
Lamar, we have it 65.3%. Josh Allen, 62.5%.
And how does that compare to the other group of quarterbacks that we're talking about here?
Well, Mayfield's up at 75. Mayfield, Darnold, Laletta, Mike White, well into the mid-70s.
Yeah. So these guys
they're both well below.
These guys are 10% lower on the stuff that you're saying they're not giving credit for. So even if you gave them an extra 5% of pass attempts that were screens, you're not fixing the accuracy problem. The issue isn't that they're not completing a high enough percentage of their passes. It's that on a specific type of easier throws,
they're still not good at it.
They're still not good at it. So the thing you want to give them credit for, they're not as good as these other guys.
Here's the other narrative driver that I think is fun. We did stuff where we tried to look into like where the quarterback's reading the field, knowing that we can't, read his brain, but you can at least see where he's looking. Is he looking left and there's multiple receivers
he looks there? No.
And then he works back
there
to the other side of the field. This was the Mariota thing. I used to tout Mario, and this is what got into my head. Mariota was so good in college, starting on one side of the field and then working to the backside post, backside dig, whatever it was. So, Lamar Jackson, one read guy, right? Josh Allen, pro-style system, likes to go through progressions.
Can't go through his progressions. Can't read the field.
They both had the same exact percentage of what we would consider one read throws, meaning they started at one side of the field and then they stayed there. Fine. But how many second reads? Lamar Jackson actually, out of the top 6 guys, it's Baker, Darnold, Rosen, Rudolph, Allen, and Lamar, he was tied with Baker Mayfield for the most second reads, the most times that they got to a second, third, fourth read. Okay, Lamar was tied with Baker Mayfield right there, 15% of the time, and he was actually extremely accurate when he did it. Lamar did not have good accuracy in most of the other measures, except when he went to the second read. He was right up there with Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. It was amazing. So this goes back to my point on Lamar, too, when I wrote it up. He does some NFL-type stuff really, really well. He just screws up so much of the easier stuff way more than you should.
Which is a little bit like Tyrod Taylor in that he is an enigmatic, unique quarterback in terms of it's not like he's the simple cookie-cutter guy who can't do this and does this well, therefore he's not a quarterback. It's that he does certain things really well and certain things that are high-level NFL stuff that's extremely difficult to teach. It's some other things that's missing from the puzzle.
That's why people that really that are big Lamar Jackson fans, you can
love him.
You can find all of these things on tape. So here's the other number. So 15% of the time he got to a second or third read. Only 13% of the time Josh Allen did that. Their accuracy on those things. Lamar was at 55%. Allen was 29% getting to a second read. So the guy that's in the pro-style system that's just like Carson Wentz, when he got to his second read, was by far the worst, least accurate guy out of the top 6.
That was the most frustrating thing in all of Josh Allen's tape for me. It's that he would get 90% of the way to a great NFL play. He would, come off a guy who was covered, work his way to the correct read, find the guy, deliver the pass, and be a yard out in front of him. You go, come on. You did everything right up until the point you missed the guy.
I have one more myth buster for you.
Do it.
So when we're going through this look stuff, it's, first read, second read, or multiple read, whatever it is. We also have scramble drill, we have check down, and we have scheme plays. Scheme plays, Baker by far had the most. But when it comes to scramble drill, so these are passes that were attempted where there was some sort of scramble drill. Lamar wasn't even first out of the top 6 in the draft class. Josh Allen actually had more scramble drill passes than Lamar Jackson. So again, going back to the guys that are like, oh, Lamar doesn't read the field. He just runs around and, finds the open guy or runs. It actually wasn't true. He does scramble to take off more than most of the guys in the class, but I've posted that tweet too. Only 27% of his rushing stats, yards came on scrambles. I know we're throwing a lot of numbers out there today, but I think this is important. This is our most analytical heavy podcast we've ever done, but I really think there are some narratives that are kind of true. There are others that aren't, and a lot of the criticisms about Lamar Jackson, like, it's fair to criticize him, but they're just doing it in all the wrong areas.
Yeah, well, that's the overriding takeaway from a lot of this, is that there's a way of criticizing every quarterback in this draft, and there are legitimate storylines. Like we said, there's so much nuance in all this, and this is why a hit rate for quarterbacks drafting is such a crapshoot, because there's 50 different things you need to fold into all this, and it's only getting more when we pull in all this data.
Right.
We're adding more and more threads to this conversation. It's only becoming harder, essentially, to work out which bits mean things. So you need to unpick each one of these strands and figure out what exactly it means and almost build like a profile of what these quarterbacks are. The other one takeaway I have from all of this is that it's amazing how difficult it is to find a way of slicing the numbers that has anything other than Baker Mayfield as the head and shoulders best quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way we've come back to.
All the time. Everyone else is the conversation is Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, because he's got all the tools, and Baker Mayfield is just about in that conversation, maybe as the 4th guy. And if you can get him in the top 10, you're probably in a good shape. But literally every single way you slice the numbers, almost regardless of what aspect you're trying to look at, it's Baker Mayfield up there, either number 1 or number 2 behind somebody else who's bizarrely good in one freaky category.
I'll give you one place that might be concerning for Baker. One place, but I'll also counter it with one thing that's encouraging. So we always talk about when a guy has a step of separation, and this is where Dak completely separated himself from the rest of the draft class a couple years ago. Baker was only 5th in the class when a guy had about a step of separation. But if you want to use the tough stuff, the stuff that we did say is a little bit more unstable, but for 2 years in a row, Baker Mayfield had the highest accuracy percentage in this class and last class on tight window throws. Tight window throws, less than a step of separation. Baker Mayfield in this class, 9% better than Josh Rosen, who came in at number 2. So Baker's tight window throw stuff, even though it's less stable of a stat, we have 2 years of data on him because we did his last year too, where he's really good at it.
And that's the key. All of this is kind of statistical generalities in terms of this is a less stable stat. This fluctuates more year to year in a large sample size. But there are always going to be exceptions to that rule. So, one of the keys is that we said right at the start of this, play from a clean pocket is way more stable than play under pressure. But Mayfield, over the last 3 seasons, has had an NFL passer rating above 110, I think, 120, while under pressure.
Right.
3 seasons running, and has led the NCAA in that category every single year. So at some point, that becomes a thing. At some point, regardless of how unstable that statistical category is, he's showing to be really good at that. And maybe one year he'll fluctuate and he'll be bad at it, but overall, he clearly looks like a quarterback that is better than everybody else under pressure.
Right. So I completely agree. Look, I think we've done quarterback episodes before. I thought this was an important one to get out there because it's way more statistical heavy than we normally. We like to normally just talk football, keep it as basic as possible, throw in the numbers where we can. but we wanted to make sure that you guys had some ammo. I think everybody needs some ammo for your discussions. We have another month of quarterback discussions out there, and I'm hoping that this added context, which we're always trying to add, added context, added some more ammo, and just added, more for you to use when, whether it's Mel says something or McShay or anybody, whether it's big name draft guys or it's just stuff you hear from teams like, oh, we love Josh Allen because he makes NFL throws, when the reality is no, he's actually like
and also
best at that.
just highlight how nuanced and complex all this is.
Right, of course.
This is anyone who's speaking in sort of singular terms and absolutes at this point with any of these guys is insane because it's just too complex.
Let's just touch on pass rushers quickly because, again, we have our analytics team, George and Eric, are going position by position just to kind of use we have 3 years of translatable data, college to NFL data. Early returns on quarterbacks point towards the grades being very important. And, again, like we said, clean pocket, and now that from an accuracy standpoint, hitting open receivers. From a pass rushing standpoint, we have a bigger sample size. Intuitively, just eyeballing our numbers and the guys that we've highlighted, from Carl Lawson to Trey Flowers to these other guys, DeForest Buckner, Joey Bosa. There were enough questions about Bosa and his combine.
Yeah.
Right now, intuitively, our numbers look really good. Marcus Golden, another guy with Arizona that just didn't necessarily have the measurables, falls to the second round, produced. Bud Dupree didn't produce as well as we wanted to see in college. Great athlete. Hasn't produced from a pass rushing grade standpoint at the NFL level. We're feeling pretty good about these, the way the grades have translated. The numbers seem to back that up. And the quick bit that they did, and they wrote it up on the site this week, comparing our production grades to all these different combine measures, it's pointing back to the grades being the most important part, the on-field production. And I'll mention there's a caveat to that, but what are your thoughts on that? The production so far has looked really good.
Yeah, so they're basically saying that the PFF pass rushing grade in particular, and in particular the pass rushing grade per pass rush, not just how well a guy did overall, but how well he was doing for every time he rushed the passer.
Everything they're doing from an analysis standpoint is on this per play level.
Yeah, and this looks like an extremely strong correlation between college production and NFL production. If it makes sense. If you were a dominant pass rusher in college, you're probably going to be a dominant pass rusher in the NFL, because why wouldn't you be? It's the same game. Okay, the competition is going up, but the deal is the same. So just looking at that, what that means for this year, I think is really interesting, because the two highest PFF pass rushing grades we've given over the last couple of years. Jonathan Allen last year, 92.6. This year, Maurice Hurst, 92.2. So right up there with Jonathan Allen. His rookie season got curtailed with injury, but right up until then, he was looking like a dominant defensive interior player right from the get-go, despite having these terrible kind of workout numbers that were putting him into this category of, people were saying nobody with this athletic profile has ever succeeded at the NFL level. The chances of this happening are tiny. And that it caused him to drop. But it looked, at least until he got injured, like we were on the money with that one. So Maurice Hurst, this is why we love Hurst so much this year, is because he has exactly that kind of production profile. He's looking like a guy who should translate, barring anything else. The other guy I think that it highlights that we've been talking about before, and why we have him as our number one edge rusher, Harold Landry. Not because of 2017, because of 2016.
Right.
We have him above Bradley Chubb, who everybody sees as this top pass rushing prospect and a guy who could go number 2 to the Giants. But Landry in 2016 was so much more productive as a pure pass rusher than Bradley Chubb has ever been. 65 total pressures in just 225 pass rushing snaps. That's pressure once every 3.5 rushes.
That's crazy.
That's ridiculous.
And that's a year after he did have a great year against the run in 2015 too. So he's at least shown both ends of it.
Once every 6 or 7 pass rushes is a very strong number for an edge rusher.
And he's
3.5 is obscene. Like, that's a staggeringly productive rate. So that 2016 season suggests that Harold Landry could be a guy to step straight in and dominate.
Yeah, so I do suggest you guys get to the site, check it out. That would be my concern with Chubb as a top 10 pick. I think he's an excellent football player, solid all-around player. I think he's closer to Shaq Lawson from a couple years ago, who he said was a great run defender who could develop into a good pass rusher. I think Chubb's a little bit closer to that than he is Myles Garrett, Derek Barnett. Like I said, Louis Riddick came out and said that he would have taken Chubb over Garrett. I mean, Garrett, by our numbers too, he was excellent as a rookie. He translated perfectly fine. So I'm still banking on Garrett over Chubb at this point.
I'm just saying, at this point, if you need a pass rusher in the NFL, and there are a bunch of teams that need one pretty high in this draft, you would need a very good reason to take Chubb over Landry, given what the PFF grades say. They suggest there's a much stronger chance that Landry becomes that pass rushing force in the NFL than Chubb does.
The case for Chubb is when you look at his grades, improvement every year. Landry, of course, injury-riddled season last year. Did get a little bit more attention by opposing offenses when he was on the field last year. Wasn't as productive, but that high-end 2016.
As long as you're happy with explaining away his 2017, which it seems to be a pretty good consensus that was an ankle injury that essentially derailed that whole year. As long as you're happy writing off that 2016 season was special.
Plus, he killed Chubb in the 3-cone.
Well, that too. Mike, that's where Mike puts him above.
Welcome back, Mike, soon. We'll be talking 3-cones and edge guys. So the caveat I wanted to mention earlier, our grades have translated extremely well. The one place where the numbers can be skewed a little bit is there's certain guys that we had with maybe a great pass rush grade who didn't get drafted until the 5th or 6th round, who just didn't get the opportunity to fail or succeed at the next level. So there's a little bit of, the NFL is influencing this, right?
Yeah.
So when Myles Garrett and Joey Bosa crush our system and have great grades and the NFL agrees with us, then we're okay. We know that they're going to get an opportunity. But there are enough.
There's a hole to all of this analysis
in
terms of there's a bunch of guys, because we're coming at this from a completely different starting point to the NFL. There's a bunch of guys who we love who the NFL doesn't and will never give an opportunity to because of that. And that, I mean, there's no way of evaluating those guys. Did we miss? Did we actually hit? But the NFL never gave these guys a chance. We'll never know. So there's a good section of players in every position that are just, incomplete grades from us in terms of how this stuff projects, because until we can get the NFL actually give those guys a chance on the field, nobody's going to have any idea either way.
Right. And so the guys that have been at the high end, though, especially that have gotten the NFL opportunity, the correlation is extremely high with pass rushers. That's both on the interior and on the edge. Mm-hmm. And again, they even compared it to a few combine metrics, and the on-field play was much more stable. So
that seems hard to believe, Steve. Are you telling me that how a guy played football in college is more predictive of how he's going to play football in the NFL than how high he jumped?
So, yes. Let me add one more thing to that, because I've had a few back and forths on Twitter about this as well. So this is where people generally come back at us and they say, yeah, but a lot of good college players didn't translate to the NFL. And here's the difference. Our system is quantifying what we consider good college production. There's a difference between you listing all of the guys that you think were good in college based off of stats or based off of sacks or based off of whatever it is. So the point is, whatever old measure you were using to say this college quarterback was good, this college pass rusher was good, or why don't all Texas Tech quarterbacks translate to the NFL, it's because we're not using whatever the old measure was, which was stats. Mm-hmm. Most people said, this guy had good stats in college and he was bad at the NFL. This is a completely new way of evaluating what college production actually is, and it's by taking every snap, putting it through the PFF system, and I'm saying the PFF system's interpretation of college production has translated to the NFL extremely well so far.
And one final point about that is that we're never going to be saying that this is all you need. If
Correct.
a guy is productive in college, he will be productive in the NFL, because there is always going to be a degree of necessary athleticism. Like if you are below these thresholds in terms of size, strength, speed, athleticism, it doesn't matter how productive you were in college in the Pac-12, it's just not going to work in the NFL where people are bigger, stronger, faster. So, the as much as I just mocked it before, the idea that, college play is far more important than how fast a guy runs the 40, if, there is a certain threshold of athleticism that you're going to need to meet in order for that to translate successfully.
Yeah, so that's it. It's just that, so people have wanted to dismiss our grades in the past, and all we're trying to say is, not only is it a big part of the puzzle, it might be an even bigger part of the puzzle than people ever imagined, and then you add the other parts, and you're going to have some pretty good stuff. We're just scratching the surface on the studies here. It's only been based off of a guy's last year in college. Once you start to add multi-year production, and it's like, well, Joey Bosa was dominant for multiple years, and Myles Garrett was dominant for multiple years, that's going to make their projection even cleaner. I think when you start to add in multiple years, so we're just scratching the surface on it, but I'm liking the where it's going.
And I suspect when you add in the athleticism stuff, it's going to be a threshold thing as opposed to how good were you in this particular category. So I think what's going to happen when you fold that in is you're going to say, okay, if the PFF grading is fantastic on this guy, as long as he's above this line, as long as he's above the, X percentile in all this stuff, we're good. Whether he's the 20th percentile or the 80th percentile doesn't matter. As long as he's above 20, that's a really good place to work with.
Eliminator, right? So if you guys want more in depth than we're able to give you, maybe a little bit more geeky,
a little bit more math,
a little bit more mathy.
We're not
as
good
well.
at math.
The PFF forecast. Go and listen to those guys, George and Eric. They're doing a heck of a job digging into what the college grades actually mean so far with 3 years of information. We're going to wrap it up today, Sam, with guys we love this week, guys that we've enjoyed watching football. I've been hearing you rave about this guy. I took 2 days off of vacation.
You did.
This week.
You bailed for 2 days.
I did. I needed a little break. Just take a little breather.
I had to do your work for 2 days.
Well, that's how we do it here.
Next man up.
Next man up.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. Hashtag next man up here at PFF. But I was just getting flooded with text messages. I'm trying to enjoy a little downtime and hang out with the kids, and I got you raving to me about a Marshall safety.
Dude, it's boring in the office when you're not in. I had to rave to somebody. It was either you or it was the guys that were doing the finance stuff.
You missed me.
I wouldn't go
You
that
just
far.
admitted that you missed me.
No, I missed
Thank
being
you.
able to talk to somebody that was not a finance guy in the office.
That's fair.
That's all I'm saying. So, we've joked before about how, there are guys who flash, jump off the tape from one play and make a fantastic play, and now you suddenly want to see that guy do it again and again. He becomes a little bit of a hobby horse waiting for this guy to do another spectacular thing. I improved on one play scouting with this guy. I was watching Chase Litton, the Marshall quarterback. No, I wasn't. I was watching Chase Litton, the Marshall quarterback, face off against Dalton Sturm, the UTSA Roadrunners quarterback. Those two faced each other in what I'm now calling the underrated bowl during the season. And I was watching Sturm play, and out of the corner of my eye, the Marshall free safety just flipped his hips and drove on a pass in such a spectacularly fluid way that I was like, ooh, who's that guy? And so I had no idea who he was, looked him up. His grade for that game was dominant. His PFF grade was fantastic.
Looking at, yeah.
So already I'm pretty pleased about how that's worked out. His overall grade for the season was pretty good, right? So I'm like, okay, I want to have a look at this guy, at least. Give him his own tape, draw that up. Let's start working through him, see what he is. Got that tape pulled up, started looking through his play over the season. He's actually pretty good. And what's better than that is he's got a kind of interesting story about him. He was a legit 4-star high school recruit, went to Virginia Tech, ended up, for reasons that I can't quite unpack because they're not really, listed anywhere, got turfed out of the team, or turfed out of the college for reasons that never came out properly. Ended up on Last Chance U, the Netflix show about East Mississippi Community College. The first season, he was one of the players for East Mississippi, winds his way up back on Marshall. So this is a legitimate athlete who went on a very circuitous route to ending up as now an NFL prospect. And his tape is legit. He does a lot of nice stuff, both from a free safety spot, from in the box as a kind of rover linebacker safety, and covering the slot, either off the ball as like a quarter safety covering the slot, or actually man-on-man with slot receivers. He's fun. He's a legit low-round sleeper that I think is actually a pretty good player.
C.J. Revis. So I'll have to cross-check him.
C.J. Revis,
before we put out
Marshall safety.
Before we put out the draft board. But I like
also, his Twitter handle is Revis Island. He needs to... I like it, but I'm pretty sure it's already been taken. You need to come up with your own thing.
So you're talking about one play scouting. I've started to kind of Twitter scout.
Scout.
I've had multiple quarterbacks kind of hop into my mentions lately. To me, that's a big red flag. So college quarterbacks, I've been saying, hey, nice play by so-and-so college quarterback, and you either get like a like or a response. Or
I got Chase Litton. He retweeted all the plays I pulled up about him the other day.
I think that's a big red flag.
Big red flag. Also, many other Littons retweeted it, so I think the whole Litton clan is
that's smart. That's
retweeting his stuff.
That's how you build the buzz. So that's my way of testing prospects.
Oh, yeah?
Is you put out some information. Like Sam Darnold doesn't retweet me.
Do you tag them, or do you just...
No, I don't tag at all. Baker doesn't retweet me. He only retweets the negative stuff.
Yes.
And I've never said a bad word about
stuff.
He keeps track of all the negatives. So the guy I like this week, I finally got a chance to really dive into the Kyle Lauletta tape, the Richmond quarterback that was excellent at the Senior Bowl. We watched the Senior Bowl practice film, and everybody was raving here at PFF his red zone work. We were just watching.
Sick.
We had a just red zone cut up, all of the because we've got all the behind the scenes access at the Senior Bowl. We do all the work with those guys. So we were just watching his red zone stuff, and it's like pinpoint fade, back shoulder. He threw a dig route, back boom, right front number. So his red zone accuracy looked great. The thing that I loved about Lauletta when I was watching him was his middle of the field accuracy was outstanding. Threw with a little bit of anticipation, but just put the ball right on guys' numbers. And 40 for 52. I had to look it up. It was one of those things where you watch the film, and it's like, man, he's really good at throwing these digs and posts and seam routes, So I watch all these routes, and then I go to the numbers to back it up. So he was 40 for 52 in between the numbers at the intermediate level, that 10 to 19-yard level, which seems very specific, but that's a great place to win at the NFL level. I'm not saying he's Sam Darnold, but strengths and weaknesses kind of remind me of Sam Darnold from a throwing standpoint. So very good at the middle of the field, not as good just throwing the deep ball. He had some ugly, terrible overthrows, underthrows on the deep ball, and that's kind of like very, very broad, like a Sam Darnold profile. Good in the middle, still has to work on the deep ball timing and everything, but I liked a lot of where Lauletta's strengths lie.
You're buying into this Brady successor thing. There's a Navy connection. It's too obvious. This is the quarterback that the Patriots are drafting to take over for Tom Brady, right?
Could be a guy. He could be a guy. There's even New England media is already. I did a couple interviews back there where they went deep into the whole potential connections with the Navy stuff and the family and all. There are definitely some potential connections there with Lauletta.
There you go. I answered it. Brady's successor, Kyle Lauletta, assuming they draft him.
Yeah, breaking news.
It's probably not happening.
Then maybe it's not him.
Yeah,
he'll take over in 7 years before. Well, then
assuming they don't go to flag football.
Then they go to flag football. So Brady's got 15 more years in the NFL. All right, guys, that'll do it for us today. Sam and I are putting the finishing touches on Draft Guide version 2. That'll be out at some point next week. If you guys have PFF Edge, it'll just be boom, instant download for you guys. If you haven't signed up yet, be sure to check out Edge. And if you want to get the big boy, it's PFF Elite, which gets all the good stuff of Edge, but also premium stats, Sam.
Yeah.
They get the really good stuff. Premium stats, NFL information going back to 2006. Can't find it anywhere else, and it's going to be getting reskinned this summer and looking really pretty. So go ahead and check that out. Thanks again for tuning in, and I think Mike should be back next week, so get ready for that. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Make room at the table.
I know, it's tough squeezing in here, and then it's going to be awful. We might just figure it out right off. See you guys.